My name is Susi Rodriquez-Shapiro, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it's been a little over a year that I have been cancer-free, or as they say, no evidence of cancer. I was taking a shower, and as I was washing my armpit, I felt what seemed like a golf ball lump, which had not been there the day before. It really scared me. So I told my husband, this is not right. This wasn't like this yesterday. So I called my doctor's office, my primary care doctor. They were able to get me in and take a look at it, and just by touching and feeling, they said it looked suspicious and that they needed to refer me to the Margie Petersen Center. So that's where I came. The nurse practitioner who saw me looked at it and said it did look suspicious to her, and therefore they were going to arrange for a mammogram and a biopsy to see what was happening. So initially, of course, panic sets in of what is this, now what do I do? And I've always been a patient at St. John's. In fact, my 3 adult children were all born here. So when they referred me to the Margie Petersen Center, I already felt comfortable. I thought, okay, this is gonna be okay. And then once I started talking to the technicians who did the mammograms, who did the biopsies, the doctors that would come in, all of them just made me feel more comfortable. Like I felt I was in trusted hands. I felt that my nerves started to calm down a little bit, just thinking, okay, we're going to figure this out and do what has to be done. I'm also very prayerful, so I immediately turned to my God and just prayed that we could figure this out and get it resolved. But everyone that I have dealt with here at Margie Petersen has just been so kind. Instead of feeling like, yeah, well, you're patient number 12 that we've seen today, let's move on. It felt like I was the only patient that they had. And that was such a relief, to just feel that comfort and knowing that their skills and their talents were going to help me. I felt like they were all part of Team Susi, and that was a good feeling. The nurse practitioner did schedule the appointment with the surgeon, the radiation doctor, and the oncology doctor, and we all met. The thing that made it somewhat unusual and weird was that it was the pandemic. And so because of that, my husband could not accompany me to any of these appointments. And he would have to just drop me off here at the valet section, and I'd have to walk in. I didn't have that hand to hold or what have you. But like I say, once the staff called me in, I felt okay. And it was wonderful that even when I met with the 3 specialists, and it was a 3-hour appointment, an hour with each one, my husband was able to call in so that he was on a 3-way conference call to hear everything and ask whatever questions he might have. And then they recorded our conversations and sent me a USB about a week later. And that was perfect because my husband and I would have questions about something, and I'd say, no, I think they said such. And he'd say, no, I thought they said such. So then we could pop in the USB and get clarity. I met with Dr. Nishikubo, who's my oncologist, and she told me what to expect and what options might be there depending on what the outcome was of the PET scan. I'm the kind of person, I like to know what's coming. I don't like surprises, just tell me almost the worst case scenario. Then I met with Dr. Wollman for the radiation, and again, he was explaining some of it. I think I was just tuning out because it was overwhelming. And then when I met Dr. Grumely, she also is very good at explaining what the surgery might entail. She then gave me a binder that was fantastic. This binder talked about the radiation, the oncology, the chemo, the surgery, the healing, the type of services that would be available, like nutrition services, therapeutic services. And that was overwhelming too. It's like, how can so much goodness be coming? But again, that's why I felt like this was all for Team Susi. They were always patient with my questions, which I had many questions. And I understand that they're seeing cancer patients all day long and probably answering a lot of the same questions many, many times. But they never made me feel that way. And it was always, yes, well, what we think we might do is this, and explaining to me the possibilities. And on January 20th, 2021, I had surgery with Dr. Grumely. So my husband dropped me off at 5 in the morning because, again, the pandemic wouldn't allow him to come in and be at my side. the staff was just so friendly and cheerful and just wonderful, making me feel comfortable again. And again, the whole team at St. John's just works so well. They're like cogs in this fantastic wheel. And the chaplain came in, we prayed for my surgery and for the surgery of everyone else that was going to have surgery that day in the hospital. As we wheeled into the surgery room, they were playing some very calm music, kind of referred to as elevator music sometimes. So I jokingly said, gosh, I wish we had Motown music. And one of the nurses says, I have that on my phone. And they plugged it into their sound system. And the last thing I remember is Motown as I went under. Those kind of little things that are accommodating and making you feel like this is your home were really helpful. Then the next thing I remember is waking up in the recovery unit. And then Dr. Grumely came in and said that all my signs looked good and that it appeared that everything that was on the PET scan she had been able to get rid of. So it was looking good, and she felt I was well enough to go home, which was surprising because I just had breast surgery. So I went home, and really that was the right thing to do because I was well, and the staff called and checked in on me while I was at home. Then I recovered for a few weeks, and I think it was about 4 or 5 weeks after that I started the chemo therapy with Dr. Nishikubo. Some of the sessions were short and some of them were longer, and I had a total of 8 chemo treatments over a period of 16 weeks, so every other week. And what was happening was that, I had the chemo and I actually felt good for a couple of days, and I thought, well, this is odd. I thought, chemo knocked you out. Well, it did on day 3 and 4. But we finally figured out a pattern, and then the following week I'd be feeling real well. And my husband and I had bought an RV because of the pandemic so we could just travel a little bit. And he figured out a pattern so that on that good week, we would just go down along the coast, down towards San Diego, up towards Santa Barbara. And that was really a healthy recovery for me, being out in nature. And then we'd get back in time for the next treatment. The nausea, which I was very fearful of, was not present, and I think it had to do with the medications that they gave me. Of course, there is that side effect of losing your hair. And like clockwork, Dr. Nishikubo had told me approximately how many days before I'd see my hair falling out. And sure enough, on that day I got up and I saw clumps on my pillowcase. I saw clumps on the floor. I took a shower and there were clumps. So I came out and I said to my husband, today's the day, the hair's going. And I said, come with me to the bathroom, I'm gonna do it. And I just decided that I was gonna take charge of this. It wasn't gonna just fall off, I was gonna cut it off. And that was my way of having some control over what was going on. So in my bathroom, I have the mirrors that can come out on the sides. So I just started cutting away and cutting away. And I was surprised that I didn't cry. Not that I had such beautiful hair anyway, but it's still, to a woman, your hair is your crown. And previous to that, my youngest son, had sent me a hot pink wig. I told my husband, take a picture of me with my new chemo look, which was, really, really short. And then I put the wig on, and I had him take a picture of that. And I put both of those pictures side by side on Facebook. And I said to my friends, this is my new chemo look. And I just felt like that empowered me to stay positive, that it was happening, but it was not a big deal. And since then, I've decided I like my hair short. So I keep it short. Of course, my husband then shaved his head off. And it was just okay. And the people around were just very supportive and very kind. Dr. Wollman had prescribed that I was going to have, I think it was 30 sessions every day, Monday through Friday, for 6 weeks. And I'd come in and because it was with the machines that would just go right on you, and they had this fitted form to my back, so that every time I came in, it wasn't very long at all because I could just get on that thing and they'd fit it to me and that positioned me properly. And then they do the zapping. Once again, the team that I had there, Gordy and Adam, I'll never forget them either. They were 2 technicians that were just wonderful. They treated me with such dignity. You get to have a relationship sort of with them. So the The radiation went along well, and again, they also had nurses available so that if I had questions about any changes that I was seeing on my skin, they'd give me lotions, ointments, recommendations. After the treatment, which I thought, well, this went pretty well, but then it was for a few weeks after that I started seeing real changes to my skin, especially when I compared one side to the other. But again, we got through that, and they gave me all kinds of things to put on. I will say the one thing that surprised me was I kind of thought, okay, so here's my treatment plan. I'm going to have surgery, I'm going to have chemo, I'm going to have radiation. 2 weeks, maybe a month later, I'll be back. No, the fatigue lingers for a while. So I think patients need to be aware of that so that you don't think, what is wrong with me? Why don't I have energy? I got physical therapy, which helped to stretch those muscles and such. And other little quirky things that happen, a leg swells, but then they fix it. So at no time did I feel dreadful about, oh my God, this is it, I'm dying. It certainly brings mortality up when you're first diagnosed, but I just never felt that anymore once I was being treated by Team Susi. So they were just great. At the Margie Petersen Breast Center, they had additional programs that helped with my wellness after all of the treatments. And for example, I had a nutritionist who was helping to guide me with better food choices for me to make. And then because of my culture, I wanted to know, well, these are the kind of foods I enjoy eating, and I don't want to cut them out completely, but I want to know, which ones are detrimental so that I can still incorporate my cultural eating along with the healthy way. So the nutritionist in some cases said, okay, let me look into this one and this one and this one, and I'll get back to you. And she did. And that's always the key, when someone tells you they're going to do something, and then the fact that they do it and follow up. And then there was Mind and Wellness that Nurse Becky introduced me to. And again, trying to calm down and get your body back into a calmness. I felt I was deeply grounded in gratitude. Like I've said, I'm a very spiritual person, and I was so grateful for not only the fact that I was doing well, but for the team that was there, that helped me with it. And with Mind Wellness, Nurse Becky would help me do different practices that would help soothe. And we were doing this via Zoom, mind you, because of the pandemic. So that was really helpful and useful, and she guided me into, maybe you want to write about this. And that word was very helpful because I was never told, do this, do that, but it was suggested, maybe you want to consider this. And that was a gentler way of suggesting things that could be helpful to me. And as a patient, you pick and choose which ones work for you and which ones you don't think will or haven't. I got into a writing workshop that was offered, and it's a group of women who we all have the common thread. We've all been touched by cancer. And it's funny when we go around, again via Zoom, and talk about how are you? And everyone says, oh, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm that. And I said, I think all of us are fine with an asterisk, because we're fine, but there's this asterisk that then we get into some of the other things. But the writing workshop has been very healing. Again, I feel like it's, faith over fear has been kind of my mantra. Don't be afraid, have faith. And that also has led me to do some writing. I've done some scrapbooking because of the experience, just to remember. You would think you'd never forget, but again, I think that's part of the body's healing, is you remember the important things that you need to know, but a lot of the little details you kind of put to the side. And through the writing, it has helped to kind of wash through it and re-look at things now, from no longer in that fearful stage, but more in the, oh yeah, I'm a warrior. And the shame of scars, when you're first thinking, oh my goodness, I have all these scars on my body. But you think, those are scars of a warrior. That's not anything to be embarrassed by. That kind of mentality certainly helps. And then when you're having physical challenges and they provide you with physical therapy options that really help, and you see the difference from visit to visit of how your movement is better and how you can be back to your normal self better, That's really helpful. And on one of my follow-up visits, I'm walking through and I see the cards that they have about each doctor, and I see a face that looked very familiar. And I went over and I grabbed it and I looked at it and I said, "Is this my Crystal?" And it was Dr. Crystal Fancher, who was a Girl Scout I was old, but they were like 12 years old, she and my daughter and the rest of the troop, and I was one of the Girl Scout leaders. And so then I said to Nurse Becky, I said, "Is this Crystal Fancher?" So she said, "Yeah," and I told her the story. And then they called her on the phone and said, "You'll never believe who's here." I knew from very young age that Crystal had it. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that she had it, and the fact that she'd be willing to be of service and of help to others, it just seems natural that she'd be a doctor. And a breast doctor, God bless all of them. The diagnosis certainly is frightening and certainly brings on a certain panic, if you will. High-grade panic or low-grade panic, but somehow it makes you start reassessing what's happening in your life. So I would say that the most important thing is to have a medical team that you can trust. And I felt like I immediately had to call my primary care doctor, Dr. Steven Sizer. He's just been there for me for years. And to know that he was the one that was telling me that I should come to the Margie Petersen Center and meet with Dr. Grumely, that made a big difference. And then, as I said earlier, when I met Dr. Grumely and the rest of her staff, it's just the trust factor. So have trust in the medical team. If you find you don't have it, then you need to find one that you do. You need to have trust because your life really is in their hands. So I would say that the most important thing to me has been positivity. Whether it's positivity, gained from being out in nature, or positivity of a great support group of friends and family, or just from your faith. But if you stay positive, you can get through it. And I do believe that if God takes you to it, He'll get you through it. And that really has helped me a lot.